session open, or 600 seconds, which is it's also its name. In the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to provide you guys with a quick update on the euro, Bitcoin, gold, crude oil, and the DAX 30. Something we usually do about this time of the day here at the live trading room at tradecaptain.com. Before we start though, there's always thing to stress that trading financial markets unfortunately is risky, and there's a general risk that we'll lose all of our invested money. There's a little link here in the bottom that takes you to the risk disclosure statement. Good morning, Antonio. Good morning, Maurizio. I hope you guys are doing well, and happy Friday to you guys. Final trading day of the week, and yeah, hopefully we'll get something interesting. However though, following Donald Trump's comments yesterday, he literally killed what would have been a nice rally in the dollar. So Donald Trump concerned really with higher interest rates and dollar strength, and that caused the dollar index, which was on its way to break out yesterday, to quickly pull back down into the range. So we're dealing here with what I would have called at least some sort of a short-term ascending triangle with two highs, and then you had this rising uptrend. You could also just treat this as a rectangle with support here and resistance here. Actually, probably ascending triangle would have been better than a rectangle, but some sort of a pattern here, rectangle pattern. And also, you know, break to these highs would qualify as a break to this high here from November, and you would had a continuation of this dollar trend that has been in place here since April. And you can see here how the market on the daily pushed all the way up and looked like it was going to close on the other side here, and that would have propelled the price higher. If we treat this as an ascending triangle, then difference between this high and this low would have been the target, and the market could have rallied at least to 97.32, and that would have caused, you know, weakness in things like New Zealand dollar, Aussie dollar, dollar CAD, and literally across the board. And you know, the gains you would have seen in gold would have improved even further. But Donald Trump, concerned of course with what's going on now, the effect on the dollar and the effect on interest rates is fully natural. And when the economy goes faster, it becomes more expensive to borrow money, right? If imagine everybody has a great idea about, you know, revolutionize the world or something like that. You know, if everybody wants to borrow money, then you're going to ask for what? Higher interest rates. So it's a natural thing anyway. The other part as well is that the dollar tends to gain on the back of higher interest rates. So they're sort of linked. Like a country that does well gets a higher what? Currency usually, because people want to invest in that country. So this is all natural, but obviously there's a strong conflict here between his tax cuts, which are going to be inflationary and cost interest rates and the dollar go up as well, and also the high growth that he wants. There's a conflict there, but this is just the way the world economy works. This is just like the nature of the natural laws of an economy. Many times when you try to meddle, you go back to the times of communism and you know, Soviet and Cuba and other places like that, where they don't have a functioning market economy. I'm not saying the market economy is something that is always good, because it's definitely not. If you have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and access to capital and the will, you can exploit flaws in the system. Which again, if someone makes a lot of money though, other people will copy you, so you make less money. So there's some sort of normalization, but the road towards progress is bumpy, and that's where we have recessions. But the alternative, and try to micromanage the economy, is not going to do any good anyway. It's not going to, has historically not proven to be good at all. So what happened here? Well, dollar pulled back, we're stuck in a range. So us as traders here, we can't capitalize on what probably would have been a bullish move. Now if the market manages to trade above the high again, then most likely the dollar will trade to the upside. Again, it's the natural laws of the economy. And as well, what's interesting is that in the White House, I didn't read that statement, but in essence, I just read a headline, and that headline read something in line with Donald Trump, obviously understanding that the Federal Reserve are independent, and he's not going to try to meddle. But obviously, politicians, what they're doing here is very, very typical. Look at, for example, Turkey with Erdogan, where they try to influence what the central bank should do. And that's just one example. There's other places as well where people try to sort of have a view on what the central bank is going to do. But of course, the central bank itself is not like an independent body. Like the 2% target is something that legislators can adjust. At least in countries like Sweden, it's the government that decides, well, inflation should be at 2%. And if the whole parliament agrees that they want to change that, and I think they need they need a general election between these two votes, they can pass through. So if the current government, says, okay, let's change the inflation target, and then because there's going to be a new general election later this year, then you have a new government, and they as well push and vote for this in question, and I think at that point they can make changes. So the government does have some sort of power, but not sure if Donald Trump's going to be able to get away with sort of altering anything anytime soon. Anyhow, as a traders, we're stuck in the range. There's not too much we can do about that. And that means that if you're looking at the euro will probably continue to trade sideways between the June low and the July high for longer. As well, we are soon hitting August, where most of Europe shuts down. So most likely even more quieter. But keep a close eye on this. It's very straightforward. If you have a software, most brokers have it. You just right-click, add an alert, and it will send you an email or an SMS, depending on the service that you have. And when we break these levels, you get your notification. With the pound dollar, I think it can continue to, in essence, trade slightly lower, because the pound dollar is going down, not just because of dollar strength, but because we're heading towards a hard Brexit potentially, if they don't get some sort of a deal in place to sort of prolong the negotiations. So here I think this can drift to the downside. In the case of the pound, we did trade below the lows here from November last year. That level is 130.43, and as long as you trade below 31.05, there's some scope that this can go to the downside. The next market we're going to cover is going to be Bitcoin, and Bitcoin here hasn't really done too much. Let's see what happens in this week, over the weekend. Usually when institutional investors are away, the futures markets are in essence not in play. You tend to see a bit of a bullish bias in the OTC market, which is what Bitcoin is, and we might see some action. Now, if you're not already long on the back of this setup, so imagine the idea was to buy here and book profits up here. So we haven't really moved too much higher. So if you're a scalper, then probably it's time to book profits. Now, if you are of a long-term investor and you say, you know what, maybe this is it, then you probably could keep it and, maybe, I guess, reduce the stop loss a little bit to the low here, which is the July 16th low. So you should have very minimal risk, and then you just wait and see, because I think if this lingers around here for longer, it will correct to the downside, and then it will push higher, okay? Here's the price of gold, and gold managed to bounce back up. So remember, the idea here was to sell on the break at 12.36 and profit at 12.10. Went as low as 12.11, and we could have a bit of a correction today and maybe the next few days, but eventually I think people will understand that Donald Trump can't do too much unless he wants to push through and then sort of work with everybody in legislation and in the US to sort of push through changes, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. As well, right now, with the latest move, with the press conference with Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, and then, as I understand it as well, extending an invitation, so Russia can potentially, will probably visit the White House later this year. I don't think that is making him very, very popular in the US. And this could potentially be something like a new episode where there's going to be some hardcore people in power in the US that don't like Donald Trump as much as they used to. So I think any sort of pushes towards that is going to be less and less powerful. I might be surprised, but it's very, very typical. Politicians say something, the market reacts. A few days later, the market realizes they can't do anything about that. So with that in mind, I remain bearish gold below 1236, which is this level up here. And I think maybe from 1226 up to 1230, traders are probably going to look to sell. Here's crude oil. And you have a bit of a gap here. I think it just has to do with a new contract. I don't think it's an actual move. If you look at this, which is West Texas, the trend is bullish. So I might look to bottom out here over the next few days, and then we might rally all the way to the high. So I want to be neutral here. Here's the UK oil. That will be Brent crude. The market here is moving slightly to the upside. Myself, I was short on the breakout here, but I decided to close that out. I think it was yesterday. Pretty much break even, a tiny loss. And I think here, this technically we still bearish below this high. If I show you the 4 hour, this is the 4 hour, and as long as we below this candle here or this high, we should be fine. And right now, this market is just correcting. It's just correcting 50%, maybe up to 61.8% correction, so maybe up to 74, and then really it should turn bearish from these levels. However, though, with my current trading strategy, I want to see a break, and I want to see it happen quite quickly. And the problem I had here is that my stop loss was up here, so too much of a risk for the potential reward. But for sort of scalpers and people like that, then I still think probably around 74, 73, 78-ish. I think they would cut keen on doing something like this, and then, if it breaks low, even lower. What else? DAX touched the high a little bit, almost touched it perfectly, this high here. I think it could continue to move a little bit lower, but eventually I think higher as long as it's about 12,391. And that, guys, concludes today's market update. We're doing it slightly shorter today. But we don't have any questions here either. So guys, thanks so much for joining. I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you.